The transportation and logistics industry has its own set of challenges. In the hot seat, industry thought leaders take on M&A and what's driving the future of transportation and logistics. Are you ready for the hot seat?
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. MIT's recent report on the state of AI in business has put people in a frenzy, as it stated that 95% of enterprise projects fail. What does that even mean? Well, I have no idea, but I have a guest today that's going to explain and unpack that for us and a whole lot of other things. With me, I have in the hot seat, Zacharie Esmili, co-founder of Quintess AI. Zach, welcome to Hot Seat.
Thanks for having me. Excited about this.
Well, perfect. Well, before we heat things up a little bit, Zach, I want you to just take 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing at Quintess.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Quintess AI, we bring AI to industrial scale maintenance. So that means essentially bringing AI with a phone in the pocket of field technicians, for instance, in the rail industry. That's one of our first markets.
I love it. So let's get a little context here, because you got some interesting things that you've worked on in the past, and I want our audience to kind of have a little bit of context for not just what you're working on right now. So kind of walk us through some of your career stops so that we can have a little bit more of appreciation as we move along in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, indeed, what I'm working on is very tied to my past career. So I'm an engineer, worked for 15 years in maintenance operations. So first in the rail industry on the passenger side, across the world. You may hear my accent. I come from France, started with Paris subway operator, but launched various rail lines across the world with them. Then they brought me to the US. I did an MBA here, then worked in robotics. So I wanted to, stay close to complex hardware problem, but see a bit more the tech side. And finally, that drove me to self-driving cars here in the Bay. So that's where I'm based now. And what was very interesting to me is coming from, rail, things have been done in a certain way for, decades, I would say. And, there are some inefficiencies I saw on the maintenance side. And what was striking is on cutting edge, self-driving cars, we face the exact same problems. How do you make sure that technicians are productive? How do you unblock them? How do you know what's going on in the field? All of those problems were exactly the same. And so that led me to thinking of, okay, how can we solve all of that? And obviously Gen AI came a couple of years ago. It was kind of the perfect timing to change the status quo and bring AI to an industry where it was hard to do.
I love it. So offline, we were talking about our mutual friend, Paul Tonsager, who introduced us. And during his episode on the hot seat, we were talking about AI and what's the best application, because there's endless, infinite options for which to apply AI. And his suggestion was, what I see the best people doing is that they identify a very specific, very painful problem, and that's where they kind of focus their AI journey. What say you? I mean, how do you think about AI as many of our audience members are trying to figure out how best to think about it, much less execute? What is your thesis on how best to think about AI right now?
Yeah. So in my case, it was really, before starting Quintess, I had hundreds of ideas, and they all revolved around my past experience and the issues I had faced. And frankly, maintenance is, very labor intensive, industry. It's also hard to automate, right? You can't put robots, everywhere, in a manufacturing setting, but it has a lot of the same type of problems, except that, you are always fighting fires. It's a lot more unpredictable. So it's hard. And as a maintenance leader, I really had a hard time optimizing things. Part of it is because I was a bit blind on what was happening in the field. And so that's the first problem that we solved with Quintess is Typically, like technicians, they spend quite a bit of time reporting on their work. Like say, if you worked on a locomotive or any like complex asset, like you need to specifically explain what you've worked on, right? And so they spend quite a bit of time on that, but they don't really know what to write. So in the end, you have like a step that is pretty inefficient, right? Like reporting takes time. And at the same time, as a leader, you don't really have the visibility, the granularity on what has happened that you would need. And that's the first problem we solve. And over time, like our idea is, we tackle one inefficiency after the other till the point where we have more like a central intelligence that can like optimize everything for maintenance folks.
I love that. So, President of the United States, Donald Trump, he talks all the time about how great the Wharton School of Business is. And I'm curious because that's a part of your journey. Solving these types of problems, I think it takes a different type of critical thinking. So I'm curious, how did your time at the Wharton School of Business influence the way you think about critical thinking?
Yeah, so I think like for me it was, like it's rare that in a career you get a chance to like put things a bit on pause and like suddenly like reset, learn a ton from like the best professors in the world. And so that was really like a big part of my journey at Wharton and of my entrepreneurial journey of like thinking, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And specifically, when you want to build something from scratch, like we do, like you have to make sure that you work on the right problem, right? And so at the time I had some ideas, but there was like no solutions, like from a pure like tech space, and so that's kind of like I think like one type of critical thinking is just like being very sure about like what you are tackling. And yeah, like I would say a couple of years after I had, extra experience in the self-driving car space and the technology came and suddenly I could do what I've always dreamed of.
I love that. So, tell me about the journey of Quintess. Let's just kind of, I think it's really interesting. What, a year, 2 years? Yep. How far are you in right now?
Yeah, it's about a year, but exactly.
Feels like 10. Is that what that means? Yeah.
Yeah. In startup years, yeah, indeed. So for us, it was we like many folks, like we first like analyzed the environment, and so I mentioned technicians doing reporting in some kind of like ERP style software. Those are like legacy software, hard to use, hard to navigate. And so we were thinking, oh yeah, well, we can build a better software like this, right? Like obviously, and then you start talking to big companies and you realize that well, they are not going to try a new like system of record from a no-name startup, right? Like so you have to change a bit of your approach, and what we do, which is like a common theme in like what we call vertical AI, like we focus on one industry, maintenance, is that we then like switch gears and decided, hey, we are just going to integrate with whatever people have today so that we can bring AI today to them, and not like in 2 years when we do everything that their traditional software does plus all the AI stuff, right? So that was a big part of our journey of like talking to many customers and realizing like, hey, like if we want to bring AI today, that's the right approach.
I really like what you said about talking to your customers, and I think sometimes folks that are not in the startup journey, they kind of forget about that, about how important it is to just listen. And what do you need? What are you trying to solve, and how can we help you? What was some of the most helpful feedback you heard from your customers during that period of feedback gathering?
Yeah, I would say some of it was exactly like, the excitement. Like people were really excited about even like the previous vision, but they were talking in the future as opposed to, oh yeah, I would love to try your tool. So that was one big thing. But otherwise is like, digging into like what, like our first product, right, of like helping with reporting, that's when we realized, okay, like we are tackling like two problems at once. One is a pure like productivity issue, right? Like people say stuff like, well, when technicians like go on the computer to start like their reporting, all form of productivity is thrown out of the window. Like it's typically something that companies don't measure, right? Like, because it's end of the shift, but you are easily losing like 30 minutes plus every day on something that should take like literally 2 minutes. And so that was interesting to see that, across the board, like people don't measure that. And then I would say like for large companies, there is really like this key part of like data quality. Like they've tried like the previous wave of AI, right? Like, oh, let me throw a ton of data and crunch everything and see if we can predict whatever, And typically it has failed because the data quality that they have today is not to that level, right? Like you can't predict anything, or if the note you get is job done, like you won't know what the technician actually did. And so that was a key learning, that like, oh yeah, we have an opportunity to solve the data capture part and bring both like productivity and better quality, better data quality at once.
Yeah. So if you had to kind of quantify, maybe at a case study level with a particular customer, how would you quantify some of those efficiency gains that Quintess AI is delivering?
Yeah, so for us, I would say like on the pure like reporting side, it's 10x. Really like typically people spend like 20-30 minutes doing that type of reporting. Like for us, it's like 2-3 minute call. So that's like the immediate gain. Obviously, it's up to the company to leverage that and make sure that like the time saved on reporting is then like spent on fixing more stuff. But then on the data side, that's where like the big unlock is. And I would say like now we are a bit like in the first phase where suddenly like companies get the data they need and can do like the deeper analysis. But that's really like how we unlock more like return on investment for our companies.
So is that how you're kind of communicating that with your customers, just saying, hey, we're going to free up X amount of man hours, like per report, and so and then kind of extrapolate that over whatever a given period, whatever that means to them, and then you're saying this is the value that we're bringing back to you.
So I would say that's like kind of like the immediate, easy to measure type of value, but like what all companies, when they invest in AI today, like they are also looking at the big picture, right? And for us, like if you fix the data capture part, then you can really like understand what's going on with your operations. For us, it's also like tying to our next step. Our next step is to essentially bring a troubleshooting copilot. So, I mentioned like one of the inefficiencies in the maintenance world is sometimes like technicians just get stuck. Like they have like a difficult repair. They don't really know where to go from there. And so they are going to ask a senior tech or their supervisor, or maybe they have to escalate to some like engineering like team at a supplier level. So this is like extremely inefficient. And our goal is, people are already used to like talk to our AI, right? So now they can not only like report at the end of their work, but they can also like call us while they do the work, and we can tell them, hey, like based on the data that we got, those are the next steps you need to do. So for us, it's really like this, data capture is a big unlock for the value we can deliver later on for our customers.
Kind of creating leverage for like a more senior technician to say, it's kind of like shadowing you effectively because you have all that data from a best practice. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You make a great point that I think so many people, across all industries, applications, it's so new for most of us. Like you get excited about one idea. My wife, she texted me yesterday. She said, look at this new very expensive ring that I designed for myself using AI. I was like, wonderful. That's great. Like, like this is not helpful to me. But I think there's a lot of folks that have very large like misconceptions about how to use, what's the best practice, how to even think about it. So what do you think is the biggest misconception as people begin to develop their understanding about how to integrate AI into their businesses?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are several ones. One is that you have to do it on your own. I would say, like, especially like big companies sometimes can be a bit insular. So, you have your own like IT team, and you think, well, like I have to work with them and develop the solution for us. And I would say, like, often you have people like us who have thought about the same problem and are actually solving it already and specialize in solving this. So I would say, like, the first step is, don't try to build everything in-house, partner with startups. That's why this ecosystem exists. So that's one thing. The second one is, I would say, like, one big value prop, I think, from AI is like to do what was not possible before. So, like, sometimes like people focus just on slightly optimizing something that you could do. Like, it's kind of like a trivial use case of AI, right? Like, where like I don't know, you can have something like AI typing for you something on your screen, or exactly. It's helpful, but it's not that big of a deal. In our case, you had people who were kind of stuck in the past, right? Like we had forced them to use computer, or at best to type on a small screen. It was very much so just like pen and paper, but like now with a computer. But like we like, the problem was not solved. You still had the same burden. Technicians were still like scratching their head, thinking, "Oh, what am I going to write?" Like, so that's really like the big like step change, where you can completely change the existing workflow and think, okay, well, now that we have this new technology, what should we do for technicians, right? Like, how should we like rethink the whole process for them? And so, yeah, for us, it's like helping them where they are today, and then like really like cutting down the time on repairs.
So I'm really curious about your thoughts around integration, because I think that's a huge challenge. That's where things get a little sticky. But before I get there, I'm going to go back to my tease that I opened up the episode with about MIT's study on AI within business. Now, within the report, it claims that 95% of these AI projects fail. And, like your peers about lost their minds over this, basically, within the AI world. Like, what? So what does it actually say, and why should our audience care about this?
Yeah. So when you dig a bit in the report, you realize that the failure rate is twice as much when it's like an internal project in a big company, right? And so that's what I was hinting at before. A big part is, like, a company is typically stretched thin. There are other competing projects, and it's not like the core work of that company. Like, for instance, like, voice AI, it's hard. Like, if you want an AI that talk to you, not like a robot, but like with whom you can have a natural conversation, where you can say, hey, no, that's not exactly what I meant, or for the AI to ask a bunch of clarifying questions, all of that. We're like, this is tough. And so if a company tries like duplicating our product in house, like, they are going to fail. That's for sure. So because it's not what they focus on. So that's just one extreme example. But I think like there is a lot of that. Like, you really need like people dedicated to a project like this to make it successful. I would say another risk or pitfall is starting too big. So the way we work with our customers is we first identify the initial workflow where we can test, make sure that the new UX works for their technicians, and then very quickly we build on top of that. This way, like, people see the value early, and it's not like a boil the ocean type of approach, where like you know what you are measuring and you go step by step.
And would you kind of consider that some of the best practices as it relates to integration, as far as onboarding a new client? I mean, start small, build on that, get some early wins, create some confidence, that type of deal.
Exactly, and like, it goes back to, in our case, right? Like, we decided that, hey, we want to bring AI to the world like today, so we have to integrate with whatever like legacy software people use and so on. And so it's part of it is. It's finding like those initial workflows where we can easily plug in and then like build on top, especially when they use like complex old software. You have to, make sure that everything works before expanding.
I could relate to that. There's a lot of folks that reach out to us. They need help across M&A, across the whole supply chain, freight tech, what have you. And they want us to go source deals, and I'll say, give us like, what's the profile? And they're like, all of them. And like, and I'm like, I think we need to narrow our scope that we can have a defined understanding of what success looks like, right? And so,
exactly.
I definitely can see how a similar approach would be helpful on AI. Where do you think that the technology, because you talked about it, like, certain things are helpful. Maybe they're, small. They create small margin in a given person's day because they make a specific function a little easier. Where are you seeing AI create the largest, transformative return on investment?
Yeah. So obviously I'm biased, right?
Right.
So I would say, like, specifically in parts of like the economy that were untouched by technology. So that's where, like, the gain is maximum, right? Like, because if people were really constrained in how they could use technology today or in the past, now like you can really unblock them. So that's one aspect. And I would say, like, for me, it's really like the physical world, right? If you can really like boost the productivity of people working in the real world, like on like a train or a track or something like this, like you really like the efficiency gain is huge. Like you're talking about, like, as I said, like easily like half an hour every day for every technician. But then it's like, okay, when they are stuck and they spend like 4 hours or a full day on a repair, and now our AI can tell them in 10 minutes what to do. Like, this is like, unheard of. And I would say, like, that's where part of the value comes from. How do you deliver AI? Because the exact same product, right? Like helping you with troubleshooting, if it's tied to a computer and you have to read a ton of text, that's not going to work well with a technician, right? Like, they need their two hands. They need to be able to focus on what they are working on at the moment. So suddenly having the AI in their ear telling them what to do, that's how you can really unlock a ton of value. So I would say, like, there is also that aspect, right? Like, really the user experience. How do you bring AI in the best way for the users?
It seems like some of this is like, you can have a great product, but from my vantage point, it seems like someone like yourself is in part dependent upon the customer having a specific type of mindset to ask like pretty big questions.
Yeah.
So what have you to what degree are you experiencing that, and how, if people don't think that way, does that mean they should just not do AI, or like, is that a waste of time, or like what should they be thinking, and how can they grow?
Yeah, so that's a very good point, and I would say, talking to people like, in a pretty like legacy industry, you see a whole spectrum. Like you have really the innovators. They may work at a large company that has done things in a certain way, but they were really, they felt the constraints themselves. like they felt like, oh, well, the software stack that we were using was really like holding us back. And we know that we can do things better, and they were on the lookout for solutions. Those solutions just didn't exist. So then, like, when we talk to them, it's kind of like pure magic, right? Like they had a need, we are here to help, and we just work very well together. Other folks are more like, I would say, like the second wave, right? Like they are not the innovators. They are, they would tell you, oh yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why we didn't tackle this problem before, right? Like it's like essentially, so it's, so that's, I think a big part. And what we'll see is, suddenly the people who are maybe not the first wave of innovators, they will see those very successful projects and will be like, okay, well, my competitor, or sometimes I don't compete head to head, but like someone in my space is, gaining like a ton of productivity for their team. Like maybe I should also do it, right? So I think like we'll see this happening, just because companies are different culture.
I'm interested of the customers that you're serving where you're having the most success. Do you find that there's as part of that success, a necessary internal champion of what you're doing? And if so, who is that person? Like, what is their position? What influence do they have on the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you need someone who wants to change things internally, because, as I say, like at least in our case, our goal is to really revamp the existing workflows. Like for instance, it's very common that even when you dispatch folks in the field, when it comes down to like reporting their work, they go back to the office, log on a computer. You still see that, and so that's like added inefficiency, right? Like that's why I was telling you it's at least like 30 minutes per day. If you add like all these travel time that is completely unnecessary, things like this, you can, have like a lot more gain. And so it's also about like changing the way they do things. So you have to explain to the technicians, why are you doing this? What are we gaining from that? All of this. So obviously it's not just like the technology, and you need that champion. And so for us, it's typically like, vice president of maintenance, or someone around that level, or like VP of engineering with railroads, someone who really felt the pain and felt like, okay, like I want to change things, and I know exactly how your technology can help me.
I love it. So one more question, and then a little bit of a wild card for you, Zach. So as you look ahead, Quintess AI over the next 10 years, what are some of the possibilities that have you excited about the value that you're going to bring to this space?
Yeah, so for us, it's really, like our goal is to remove all the waste that we see in maintenance. So it's like, technician time not well spent. Like that's the first waste that we tackle. By getting better data and being able to then like tell people what to do, we remove like some of like the troubleshooting time, like the repetitive type of tasks. That's a second level of waste. Then like sometimes, very commonly, you have everything set, but you don't have the part because inventory management was not well planned. That's a second level of waste that we will be able to tackle. So it's just to give you a bit of a step by step of that's how we project ourselves is over time, because we'll be like so central to everything happening in maintenance operations, we'll be able to optimize all aspects of maintenance. So, and there are various studies out there showing that you have like 20-30% of maintenance work that is like just waste. So that's our opportunity for us and for our customers. And so we want this waste to go down to zero. That's our mission. So it's essentially
that's a big number. That's a big number right there. I love it. All right, little wild card for you. Your LinkedIn profile says that you speak English, French, German. Our lady listeners want to know: do you speak the language of love?
Of course.
I kid. What I really want to know is this: what are you reading right now? or perhaps a podcast that is blowing your mind, that just has you super challenged, super stretched, that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so I would say like part of it is, being a founder, you need to find time for that. But interestingly, I went back to an old one, crossing the chasm, and it's like it's a classic for entrepreneurs to understand how people adopt new technologies, and in our case, with AI bringing like something like completely new, it's very relevant. And so it goes down to like everything we discuss about how people adopt a technology, who are the ones that are more likely to start using your product, and it's like extremely relevant. And what I love is, I'm listening, so I use audiobook. I love being able to walk and read at the same time. Anyway, so I'm listening, and then suddenly I picture, oh yes, this is exactly my customer now, who wants to go full in with us, has this big vision of how our AI can completely transform their company, and those are the people we want to work with.
I love it. Zach, thank you so much for spending a little time with us and sharing a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. That's going to do it for us in the hot seat, sir. We will see you next time.
Thank you.